Hello everybody and welcome to our channel on vocabulary and grammar basics. In today's lesson, we are going to cover direct and indirect speech in English grammar, which help us talk about what someone said. This topic is also known as reported speech. We shall discuss the various rules for conversion of direct to indirect speech and vice versa with ample number of examples. Well, there are two ways to report what someone says or thinks. The first one is direct speech, which shows a person's exact words. Quotation marks are used in direct speech. They are a sign that the words are the exact words that a person used. So let us suppose there is this girl Meera who meets Shyam on her way back home. She asks him, "Where are you going?" Shyam replies, "I am going home." The direct speech for this conversation looks like the second way to report the same conversation would be the use of indirect speech. In indirect speech, which is also called reported speech, a person who is usually different from the person who spoke earlier reports what was said. Reported speech puts the speaker's words or ideas into a sentence without quotation marks. In reported speech, the reader or hearer does not assume that the words are the speaker's exact words. Often, they are a paraphrase of the speaker's words. The reported speech for the mentioned conversation looks like: Meera asked Shyam where he was going. We are reporting a question here, so we use the reporting verb asked. Shyam said that he was going home. We are reporting a statement here, so we use the reporting verb said, which is also the most common verb for reporting. Please note, use of the word that is optional in reported speech. So both of the following sentences are correct. Shyam said that he was going home and Shyam said he was going home. You can come across either one in reported speech. The most common reporting verbs in indirect speech are said and told for reporting statements and asked for reporting questions. Though other verbs such as inquired, commanded, ordered, requested, advised, suggested, exclaimed, shouted, etc. could also be used. Students often confuse between the verbs said and told, so let's quickly discuss the difference in their usage. Said can be used with any type of speech and is not followed by an indirect object. So the three sentences, Riya said, "I am hungry," Riya said to me, "I am hungry," or Riya said that she was hungry, are correct. But you can't say, Riya said me, "I am hungry." You must put the preposition to in between. In contrast, we use told to point out who was being spoken to. That is, a person who plays the role of an indirect object in the sentence. So, I would say, Riya told me, or Riya told him, or Riya told us that she was hungry. The verb told will take an indirect object after it, which means within the sentence, there should be an answer to the question, told whom? The answer could be told me, or told him, or told us, etc. As we discussed, there could be other reporting verbs as long as they suit the context of the speech. Just to give a few examples, consider the following sentences. Goldilocks said, "How hot the soup is." This is an exclamation in direct speech. You can observe the quotation marks as well as the exclamation mark. The indirect speech for this sentence could have been, Goldilocks said that the soup was hot. But then the original sense and the sudden outburst of emotion as expressed by the exclamation mark would be lost. So a better reporting verb to use would be exclaimed. Stir it with your spoon, her sister said. This sentence in direct speech is clearly an advice. So the indirect speech for this sentence looks like her sister advised her to stir it with a spoon. It's better than saying her sister told her to stir it with a spoon. More about reporting verbs later. We will discuss the relevant reporting verbs for different occasions in various sections of this lesson. So that you may form an effective mind map of the rules to convert direct speech into indirect speech and back, we are categorizing the topic into the following heads. We will start with simple statements as the basic rules remain the same even for complex cases like reporting questions, imperatives and exclamations as we would observe later on in this lesson. The following are usually changed when we convert direct speech into indirect speech, and you need to watch out for these changes while solving questions during your exam. First is tenses. The tenses usually shift or move back in time because time has passed between the moment of speaking and the moment of reporting. Accordingly, we make changes to the original verbs in indirect speech, barring some exceptions. We will shortly discuss that. Second is pronouns. Pronouns in direct speech are changed from the perspective of the person who is reporting. And the third is other words denoting time and place. Words indicating nearness in time and place must be replaced with appropriate words expressing distance. Again, we will discuss it in detail shortly. First and the most important is the shift in verb tense. When we report what someone said in the past, we usually shift back a verb tense from the tense the speaker used. Major back shifts are: simple present becomes simple past. For example, look at the following sentence in direct speech. I write poetry, she said. The verb write is in simple present tense. The indirect speech for this sentence would be, she said that she wrote poetry. As you may observe, write becomes wrote, which is simple past tense. Simple past tense becomes past perfect. For example, I saw the burglars leave, said Pankaj. This is a statement in direct speech and the verb is saw, which is in simple past tense. The indirect speech for this sentence would be, Pankaj said he has seen the burglars leave. Please note the verb saw changes to had seen, which is in past perfect tense. Present perfect tense also becomes past perfect. For instance, Ria said, where have they gone? This is a question in direct speech. The basics remain the same for statements and questions. So note the verb phrase, it is have gone, which is in present perfect tense. The indirect speech of this would be, Ria wondered where they had gone. Have gone changes into had gone, which is in past perfect. Present continuous tense becomes past continuous tense. A continuous tense indicates that the action is going on at the point of speaking. Look at the following example. I am doing my homework, said the girl. The indirect speech for this is, the girl said that she was doing her homework. Am doing, which is present continuous, gets changed into was doing, which is past continuous tense. If the tense is past continuous, which is quite rare, it gets changed to past perfect continuous. So, for example, we were living in Paris in those days, said they to me. In indirect speech, this sentence looks like, they told me that they had been living in Paris in those days. The expression were living, which is past continuous, gets changed to had been living, which is past perfect continuous. But a word of caution here. These two tenses remain the same. Past perfect remains past perfect. Past perfect continuous remains past perfect continuous. So, for instance, the sentence, I had gone to visit my aunt, he explained, would look like, he explained that he had gone to visit his aunt. Note that the verb phrase had gone, which is past perfect, remains the same in indirect speech. Also, when there are two sentences combined with the help of a conjunction and both sentences have got different tenses, then change the tenses of both sentences according to the rule. More about this rule later when we come to questions practice. While the tense of the verb usually changes, there are a few exceptions that you need to watch out for. You do not change tense of indirect speech if the reporting verb is in present tense or if in indirect speech you find say, says or will say. An example of this is Mr. Veeru says the exam will be next week. Please note that the reporting verb is says, which is simple present tense. The tense of other verbs in the quotation will not change either. As the sentence was immediately reported, the quoted information was still true. In the second case, you do not change tense of indirect speech if the words within the quotation marks talk of a universal truth or habitual action. Examples are, the earth revolves around the sun, said the teacher. The indirect speech for this is, the teacher said that the earth revolves around the sun. The quotation contains a universal truth, so we use simple present tense in the indirect speech as well. The tense does not change. Similarly, the boy said, I brush my teeth every day. The indirect speech for this sentence is, the boy said that he brushes his teeth every day. Since the sentence contains a habitual action, the tense will remain simple present. Apart from tenses, some modal verbs also change in indirect speech to reflect a lower possibility. Modals are auxiliary verbs that express necessity or possibility. So, for instance, will becomes would, can becomes could, may becomes might, and must becomes had to. One modal that I would like to highlight is shall. Shall usually becomes would. However, in reported questions, shall becomes should. As always, there are exceptions. Modals such as would, could, might, should, ought to, and used to remain the same during conversion of speech from direct to indirect. Here are a few quick examples to illustrate this change in modal verbs. I will mention a sentence in direct speech followed by its indirect speech version. Change in modals has been highlighted in blue. We will be there, he promised. He promised that they would be there. Will becomes would. I shall buy you a new dress, said her mother. Her mother said that she would buy her a new dress. Shall becomes would except for questions when shall becomes should. For instance, shall I open the box? She asked. She asked if she should open the box. She said, I may buy a laptop. She said that she might buy a laptop. May becomes might. He said, I must work hard. He said that he had to work hard. Must becomes had to. I cannot remember your name, said Lisa. Lisa said she could not remember my name, so can becomes could. And one example of modals that don't change at all. I would buy it if I had the money, he said. He said he would buy it if he had the money. Would is one of the modals in the exceptions list that don't change. There are change in pronouns in reported speech. I guess I don't need to elaborate this much because no one gets a question on reported speech wrong because of pronouns. And still, the pronouns of the direct speech are changed where necessary to reflect their relation with the reporter. They change in the following ways. The first person of the reported speech changes according to the subject of the reporting speech. I am hungry, said Trisha. Trisha said she was hungry. I, which is a first person subject, becomes she, which is a third person pronoun, because the subject or the one who spoke is Trisha, a third person subject. The second person of reported speech changes according to the object of reported speech. Arav asked her, "Where do you live?" Arav wanted to know where she lived. You, a second person pronoun, becomes she because the hearer or the object of the conversation is a third person. The third person of the reported speech does not change. He said to me, "They are in class 10th." He told me that they are in class 10th. So you can observe that the third person pronoun they remains they. The third category to watch out is words indicating time and place. The change in situation at the moment of speaking and at the time of reporting leads to the change in these words. In general, words indicating nearness of time and place are changed to words indicating distance of time and place. The following words and expressions change. Now changes to then or at that time. Ago changes to before. Thus changes to so. At once changes to that moment. This changes to that. These becomes those. Here becomes there. Come changes to go. This week changes to that week. Today becomes that day. Tomorrow becomes the next day or the following day. Yesterday becomes the day before or the previous day. Next week or next morning changes to the following week or the following morning, respectively. Last night becomes the night before, and so on. So combining the application of the three types of changes, that is tenses, pronouns and other words indicating place and time, we have a few examples for you. The changes have been highlighted in different colors. I don't like this book, said John. In indirect speech, the sentence looks like, John said he did not like that book. We met in a party last week, said Myra. Myra said we had met in a party the week before. The interviewer said to the young man, we will let you know our decision by tomorrow. The interviewer told the young man that they would let him know their decision by the next day. Tom said, I must visit the doctor today. Tom said that he had to visit the doctor that day. So, that was reporting statements. For reporting questions, imperative sentences, exclamations, there are a few additional points that one needs to keep in mind. Let's discuss questions first. Questions in reported speech are not very different from reported statements. The tenses, pronouns, and other words change in the same way. The very important thing, though, is that once we tell the question to someone else, it isn't a question anymore. So we need to change the grammar to that of a normal positive sentence. For questions, the most common reporting verb is asked, though we can also use other verbs such as inquired, demanded, or wanted to know. About the word order, the word order in a reported question is the same as in a statement. The subject comes before the verb. Also, you do not use the helping verb do to form reported questions. Some examples are, "Are you ready?" asked her mother. Her mother wanted to know if she was ready. The old man said to the boy, "Where do you live?" The old man asked the boy where he lived. Please note that we dropped the auxiliary verb do in the indirect speech. She said to me, "What are you doing?" She asked me what I was doing. 3 points that I would like to highlight are: notice that the reporting verb asked, just like the verb told, is mostly used with an indirect object in reported speech. Asked whom? Probably asked the boy or asked me. Second, we drop the question mark in indirect speech. And third, notice the word order. In indirect speech, the subject comes before the verb phrase. Like in the last example, I comes before the phrase was doing. Whereas in the original question, the subject is sandwiched between the auxiliary verb and the main verb. In the question, what are you doing? You comes between are and doing. To get more comfortable with reporting of questions, there is one more very effective tip that I would like to give you. There are 2 types of questions. The first type is a question to which the answer is yes or no. And the second type is a question which seeks some information. The first step for converting direct speech of a question is to decide its category out of these 2. Thereafter, in a yes-no question which begins with an auxiliary verb, we use if or whether in indirect speech to introduce the clause containing paraphrase of the question. We may also use whether or not for this purpose. So consider the following example. Priya said, "Will you attend the party?" The indirect speech for this interrogative sentence looks like, Priya asked if I would attend the party. We can also say, Priya asked whether I would attend the party. As you would have noted, we use if, whether, or whether or not as joining words. The other type, information questions, seek some information from the hearer and usually begin with a verb word such as what, when, where, etc. For such a question, no conjunction is used as the question word itself can be used as the joining word. As discussed earlier, the word order in indirect speech should be changed from that of a question to that of a proper sentence, which means subject should come before the verb phrase. Examples are, the stranger asked, "What time is it?" The stranger inquired what time it was. He asked his father, "Who was that man?" He asked his father who that man had been. Well, don't forget the other rules regarding tenses, pronouns and other words. The verb was would change to had been in indirect speech. Next is reporting of imperative sentences. Imperative sentences are used to give some advice or suggestion or to make a request or even to give a command or order. The subject is not mentioned in imperative sentences as it is understood to be the second person subject, you, mostly. Examples of imperative sentences are, open the door. It's an order or it could be a request depending on your tone. That is how you speak it. If you add a please, it becomes a little polite, as in the sentence, "Please clean my room," which is clearly a request. Don't forget your bag is another example, which is a suggestion or a warning. The only deviation from the second person subject is when the subject is first person, us. Such imperative sentences start with the word let. For instance, let's play football. Be nice to your brother and sister is another example. It's an advice. In fact, this imperative sentence can be rephrased as, you should be nice to your brother and sister, which conveys the same meaning. Typical reporting verbs used for imperatives are requested, entreated, advised, urged, forbade, ordered, directed, suggested, commanded, warned, called, etc. In commands and in requests for action or permission, we may use infinitives, which are constructed using to plus the simple form of the verb for reported speech. For instance, look at this man crying and saying, "Please help me." He is making a request for action. The indirect speech for this sentence would be, the man requested or begged them to help him. The phrase "to help" in red ink is an infinitive phrase. Similarly, in commands, when you strictly tell someone to do or not to do something, let's suppose there is an instructor who says, "Do not cheat in exam." The indirect speech of this would be, the instructor warned the students not to cheat in the exam. Let's focus on the sentences where we give an advice, recommendation or suggestion. In reported speech, where the main verb is recommend or suggest, followed by a that clause, we use the subjunctive or base form of the verb. Alternatively, we can also use a gerund phrase. Did it sound French to you? Pay attention to the examples below to grasp the usage. "Why don't you go to the doctor?" he said. This might look like a question, but no, it's not a question. Quick check. Is the speaker seeking some information? No, definitely not. He is giving a suggestion. So in indirect speech, we would say, he suggested that I should go to the doctor. In this sentence, we can drop the word that or the word should or both, and the sentence would still be correct. So I can say, he suggested I go to the doctor. It's correct. Note that we used that clause to join. Alternatively, we can say, he suggested going to the doctor, which is also a correct sentence and uses a gerund phrase starting with going. Second example is, "Take some rest," said the doctor. Indirect speech of this would be, the doctor recommended that she take some rest, which is the same as saying the doctor recommended taking some rest. And the third example is, "Don't wait to apply for this job," said Anna. Indirect speech, Anna recommended that she not wait to apply for that job. Some more examples. Request first. "Can I have the newspaper, please?" said he. It's a request for an object. A short and crisp conversion into indirect speech would be, he asked for the newspaper. "Will you carry the box for me?" she asked. It's a request for action. It can be converted into indirect speech in two ways. She asked me if I would carry the box for her, or she asked me to carry the box for her. The second version uses an infinitive to carry. Jim said, "Can I make an appointment?" It's a request for permission. Again, Jim asked if he could make an appointment, or Jim asked to make an appointment. Then there could be a negative request. For instance, "Please don't be late," said she. It gets converted into indirect speech as, she asked or requested us not to be late. There could be a command or suggestion. For instance, "Plan ahead," said my father. In indirect speech, it would look like, my father told me that I should plan ahead, or simply, my father told me to plan ahead. And the last one is, Mom said, "Call me when you get home." In indirect speech, this imperative sentence would look like, Mom said that we should call her when we get home, or Mom said to call her when we get home. And the last category, indirect to indirect speech, is exclamatory sentences. Exclamatory sentences express a sudden outburst of some emotions such as joy, sorrow, contempt, regret, surprise, etc. In reported speech, the words or the sound used by the speaker to express an emotion is omitted. The exclamatory phrase or word, that is interjection, is replaced by expressions such as exclaimed with joy, sorrow, regret, surprise, contempt, etc. In particular, the interjections hurrah or ha, which reflect joy, would be expressed as exclaimed with joy, delight, or exclaimed joyfully. The interjections alas or oh, which reflect sorrow, regret, or loss, would be expressed as exclaimed with sorrow, grief, regret, or cried out. The interjections what, oh, how, which reflect surprise, would be expressed as exclaimed with surprise, wonder, astonishment. The interjection bravo, which reflects appreciation, would become applauded. The interjection pooh, which reflects contempt, would be expressed as exclaimed with contempt, and so on. Needless to say, the exclamation mark is also removed. Let's have some examples for the conversion of exclamatory sentences. The boy said, "Hurrah, we have won the match." The boy exclaimed with joy that they had won the match. "Wow, what a handsome man he is," said the girls. The girls exclaimed that he was a handsome man. Please note that apart from the interjection wow, we also removed the woe word. The old man said, "Alas, I have lost my purse." The old man exclaimed with sorrow that he had lost his purse. The child said, "What a beautiful sight." The child exclaimed with delight that it was a very beautiful sight. Or we can say, the child exclaimed with delight that the sight was very beautiful. So that completes the topic. Here is a mind map of direct-indirect speech that will help you build a mental picture of the topic. It covers the areas we should keep in mind while attempting a question on direct-indirect speech. Coming up in our next video are questions on direct-indirect speech which were asked in previous year's papers of SSC and government jobs. Just to give you a flavor of the type of question that is asked in government job exams and how to apply the rules that we have learnt in this lesson, let us try out a question which was asked in SSC 2016. In the following question, a sentence has been given in direct or indirect speech. Out of the 4 alternatives suggested, select the one which best expresses the same sentence in indirect or direct speech. For tackling this question, the first thing we must do is quickly place it in your mind map of the topic. The clerk said to the visitor, "Shall I ask these people to wait for you?" And a quick read of the options tells us that we have to convert the direct speech in the question stem into indirect speech. It's a yes-no question, so we must join using if or whether. And as we know, change of tenses, pronouns and other words will be according to the common rules. We quickly go through the options to find major differences, and a quick read tells us that option D is wrong. There is no if or whether, and the original intent of interrogative sentence is also changed. Second clue is shall changes to should in indirect speech for questions, and these changes to those. Second option ruled out, and even third is ruled out on this account. Our correct answer is option 1. The clerk asked the visitor if he should ask those people to wait for him. So don't forget to watch part 2 of this video focusing on practice of questions from government job papers. For any doubts or queries on this topic, do feel free to drop a comment on the video page. You can even mail us your comments and feedback or any queries at aptispeak@gmail.com. Hope you liked the lesson. Subscribe our channel and stay tuned for more such videos. Thank you.